Hey everyone, it is time for a takedown. Today we are going to take down the 24 most common arguments against Bitcoin and crypto. And this is from an article yesterday called The 24 Reasons I Don't Believe in Bitcoin and Crypto by Jesse Colombo, released December 18. I think that's yesterday. I was hoping when I saw this article, as I've told you before, anti-Bitcoin and anti-crypto articles are the very most favorite thing I read. I've read every single anti-Bitcoin and anti-crypto book. I've read most of the anti-crypto and anti-Bitcoin articles, and I've talked about how usually they miss the mark, and I did a video on how to spot misinformation. And if I remember, I will post it in the comments. So I wanted to go item by item through all 24 of this guy's arguments and do a sort of a speed round refutation of why this guy misses the mark. The first thing, I was hoping he would come up with something I hadn't heard before, but alas, every single argument he makes is one I've read about a dozen times over the last 10 years. Or I should say the last 7-8 years or so that I've been following this stuff. But anyway, so he doesn't come up with anything original, but he has done a good job of listing all 24. And so we're going to go one by one. Okay, item number 1. The potential number of cryptocurrencies is unlimited. Well, this is a super lame argument because this guy comes from gold. So his entire business is being an analyst and an investor in gold and silver. So you find out later in the article that his entire purpose of writing the article is he is deathly afraid of the United States adopting Bitcoin as a strategic reserve asset, and especially selling some of the United States gold in Fort Knox to buy Bitcoin. So his whole business is selling people gold and silver, or at least being an analyst and an investor in those things. I'm not sure if he's in the market of selling them. People like Peter Schiff are in the market of selling gold and silver to people. And so the people who are the most anti-Bitcoin are the people who are threatened by it because they are people who are deep in gold and silver, and they are afraid Bitcoin is going to replace gold and silver, which it will, and it is, as the preferred, scarce money. So anyway, you find out later in the article that this guy's an analyst for gold and silver and an investor in gold and silver, and the whole purpose of writing the article is to encourage people to buy gold and silver and not Bitcoin, which is ridiculous, but we'll get to that. Okay, so he says the potential number of cryptocurrencies is unlimited. Okay, this coming from a guy who invests in gold and silver. So saying that the number of cryptocurrencies is unlimited is like saying the number of metals, the amount of metal is unlimited. Yes, I can buy tin, I can buy a bunch of metal, I can buy scrap metal, I can buy metal really cheap, but that doesn't make gold not scarce. So gold is a kind of metal that is scarce because of its monetary properties, scarcity being one of them, but there's others. So cryptocurrencies are not scarce, but Bitcoin is scarce. There will only ever be 21 million. This is like saying anybody, money, paper money is not scarce because we can all go buy up Monopoly games, write our names on the bills and each release our own paper currency. And the answer is yes, you can, but that doesn't mean that the US dollars, can't make US dollars up that way. Now, some people can. The Federal Reserve can, but not you. But anyway, so the assertion that the potential number of cryptocurrencies is unlimited is ridiculous because everybody agrees the potential number of cryptocurrencies is unlimited, and everybody also agrees that they're virtually all worthless. And the ones that are not obviously worthless today are going to be discovered to be, worthless when people realize they have no utility. So anyway, again, and then he goes on to say gold and silver are scarce. But again, by his argument, metal is not scarce. And he's arguing, yeah, metal is not scarce, but gold and silver are. Well, I would make the same argument for cryptocurrencies. Cryptocurrencies are not scarce. You and I could make our own cryptocurrency tomorrow, but it'd be worthless and nobody would use it. So Bitcoin is scarce. I don't care about crypto. Bitcoin is scarce, and that's why it's so valuable, and that's why it's worth more than 2 trillion. So it's a lame argument, but he makes it. Anyway. Number 2, the risk of Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies being rendered obsolete by more advanced and modern cryptocurrencies is his number 2. We've talked about this in a separate video. Bitcoin is not going to be obsoleted by something else the same way MySpace got obsoleted by Facebook. I've done a whole separate video about that. So, if you want, look up that video, the keyword. I think you can find that video if you search my page for outcompeted or the word MySpace. You can find a dedicated video on that, so I'm not going to cover that here, other than to say that is not going to happen for all the reasons I've covered in numerous videos before now. Okay, number 3, Bitcoin is notoriously energy intensive and inefficient. First of all, Bitcoin uses, let's call it 1/10 of 1% of the world's electricity. So that's 1/1000th of the world's electricity. Heating, air conditioning, and refrigeration use like 30%. 300 times more electricity is used for heating, air conditioning, and refrigeration than is used for Bitcoin mining. Also, the amount of electricity used for Bitcoin mining does not scale with the usage of the network. It's used, essentially, the same amount of electricity is used whether or not there's one transaction on the network or whether or not there's millions. It's not related to that. It's related to how much total security and auditing of the Bitcoin network is happening. So there's no reason Bitcoin needs to use more than 1/10 of 1% of the world's electricity. It just needs to use enough that it's not easy to put that amount of electrical power all together in one place, in an effort to compromise the network in some way. So anyway, I have never met anyone who thought the electricity usage of Bitcoin was a problem if they thought it was valuable, like if they thought it was bringing value to the world. The only people that argue that Bitcoin is not, that the electricity usage is a problem are people that think it's worthless and we don't need a solid, non-sovereign money, meaning a non-government issued money. So nobody argues that 30% of the world's electricity should not be used for heating, air conditioning, or refrigeration, because they see value in that. So the only people who think the energy usage of Bitcoin is a problem are people that do not see the value of Bitcoin. A good way to put it is, if we could find the world's most perfect money, is it worth 1/10 of 1% of the world's electricity to power the network of the world's most perfect money? And if you believe Bitcoin's the world's most perfect money, that is a fantastic use of electricity. So anyway, again, he just thinks it's not, and therefore he has a problem with it. What he never mentions is that gold mining and silver mining use huge amounts of electricity and have a much more negative impact on the environment than Bitcoin. So if you've ever seen a gold mine or a silver mine, they're like strip mining for precious metals. And of course, he never has a problem with that because he's out there selling gold and silver and promoting those two things. But he never mentions the environmental impact of gold and silver mining because he thinks gold and silver are good money. So if he thought Bitcoin was good money, he would not have a problem with it either. All right, number 4. Bitcoin might be in a massive bubble artificially inflated by Tether. I'm not going to go into what Tether is, but people have been complaining about Tether for, 10 years now or since it was invented, and Tether's never blown up, and I'm not going to even go into Tether. But regardless, if Tether went away, it would force everybody to use Bitcoin instead of Tether as their primary trading pair, which, frankly, would probably be good for Bitcoin rather than bad for Bitcoin. So he acts like that's, somehow inflating the price of Bitcoin, but it's kind of a ridiculous assertion. And if Tether went away, people would just use Bitcoin as the sort of reserve currency for trading, and that would actually, in my opinion, probably be better for Bitcoin. But anyway, he claims it's in a bubble. Well, I've refuted this already with my website, bitcoinbubblemyth.com. That's Bitcoin Bubble and the word myth, myth.com. So if you want to know why Bitcoin's not a bubble, go to bitcoinbubblemyth.com and watch my entire presentation about why Bitcoin is not a bubble. And he makes a really weak argument that it is, which is really, again, quite weak. But go watch the takedown at bitcoinbubblemyth.com if you're interested. Item number 5, the real world usage remains minimal, primarily limited to speculation. He offers no good arguments for this. So we've talked about this in a previous video where the vast majority of Bitcoin that is held because of its monetary properties as a store of value. And holding Bitcoin as a store of value is using Bitcoin. So I did an entire video about how much time money is being used as a medium of exchange versus a store of value. And the short take is a tiny fraction of Bitcoin's usage is as a store of value, is as a medium of exchange. The vast majority of any money's usage is as a store of value. So he acts like, it's not being used for that, when the truth is tons of stuff is being used. Bitcoin's being used for billions of dollars of transactions as a medium of exchange every day, or every year, or every quarter, every week, however long. And that its store of value properties are being used constantly by everyone who holds it. So again, it's a weak argument that presumes this is a common argument that people, they argue that if it's not being used to buy cups of coffee on a daily basis, it's not working. Well, of course, nobody uses gold and silver. This guy's promoting gold and silver and claims nobody's using Bitcoin to buy coffee. Nobody's using gold and silver to buy coffee. That doesn't mean, neither one of them is valuable. And again, in the future, more and more transactions happen on the Bitcoin network and the Bitcoin Lightning network for smaller payments every single day. And this guy acts like nobody's using it. Anyway, which again is kind of a weak argument coming from a guy promoting gold and silver, which, nobody argues that nobody uses gold and silver to buy coffee. People actually do use Bitcoin to buy a cup of coffee. They just usually use the Lightning Network, or in my case, something like the Coinbase debit card, which I use to buy coffee and anything I want all day long, everywhere I shop. All right. Number 6. Past gains don't prove that a cryptocurrency is a prudent investment going forward. Well, first of all, I would agree with him for cryptocurrencies. You'll notice there, he did not say the word Bitcoin. So this is a favorite tactic of people criticizing Bitcoin, is to switch back and forth between using the word Bitcoin and the word cryptocurrency. So they use the word cryptocurrency to complain about things that do not apply to Bitcoin, and then they switch back to Bitcoin when they're making arguments that do apply to Bitcoin. And so they do that because they don't want you to notice that, wait a second, the arguments that this person's using, do apply to crypto but don't apply to Bitcoin. So in this case, he's saying past gains don't prove that a cryptocurrency is a prudent investment going forward. I agree, and the past gains of the vast majority of cryptocurrencies are completely bogus and stupid, like XRP, and will probably eventually go to zero. But that does not apply to Bitcoin. Bitcoin has already been through 4 price corrections greater than 75% in its lifetime, and I cover all of that in the bitcoinbubblemyth.com, the video that is posted on bitcoinbubblemyth.com. So again, go to bitcoinbubblemyth.com and you can watch it and you can see everything about that. All right, number 7. MicroStrategy is essentially a Ponzi scheme centered around Bitcoin. First, that's a ridiculous assertion because a Ponzi scheme involves paying out old investors with new investors' money, which is not what MicroStrategy is doing. They're raising money from the marketplace in the form of selling stock and raising debt, and they're using it to buy Bitcoin. And then the people who own the stock own Bitcoin as a percentage of what they own. So it's totally not a Ponzi scheme, even by the literal dictionary definition of a Ponzi scheme, and that, assessment is ridiculous. Now, MicroStrategy does have some debt, and they will be required to pay that debt off in 6 or 7 years. And so if Bitcoin is down in 6 or 7 years, they're going to have to sell some Bitcoin in order to satisfy that debt. But that is non-recourse debt. Basically, it's debt that, there's no consequence to them paying. They have no assets encumbered by that debt. So again, the Ponzi scheme, assertion is just completely wrong on its face by a classic definition of Ponzi schemes. All right, number 8, Bitcoin is highly correlated to the NASDAQ, which is experiencing a massive bubble. One, Bitcoin has become less and less correlated to the NASDAQ and to the stock market over time. He never points out that correlation has come way down over time. Or that at times when the stock market was tottering, like after the 3 banks failed last year, that Bitcoin actually went up. So he leaves that out, and he leaves the lowered correlation over time. I don't know if the NASDAQ itself is in a bubble. The stock market itself goes through bubbles as a result of the Fed's money printing. But that doesn't mean that, it doesn't mean it won't, there won't go through a correction, but there's no reason to believe that it's not like Bitcoin is doomed if the stock market goes through a recession. It's not like those two are correlated. Give me 1 second to get a drink. Okay. So the next question this guy comes up with is, he says, Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies are far too volatile. 1 second. Okay, so we've covered this before. I've done an entire video about volatility, so you can go look that up, and you will know everything you want to know about the volatility of Bitcoin. He says they're too volatile to be used as currencies. Well, the short take is anytime the growth in the value of something is growing rapidly, it's going to be volatile during that growth phase. as the volatility comes down, and Bitcoin's volatility has come way down over time, but so do the returns. As the volatility comes down, the returns come down as well. So people claim that they want Bitcoin to be less volatile without realizing that when it is less volatile, it will have less upside. So the greater the volatility in the near term, the better, because it means your investment in Bitcoin is still early. It means there's a lot of upside before it sort of normalizes as world money. The purchasing power goes up 2% or 3% a year, along with productivity growth and population growth. So eventually, 20, 30, 40 years from now, Bitcoin's purchasing power will only go up 2 or 3% per year. And it will go up as a result of human productivity growth and, the population growth and things like that. But until then, it's volatile, and it has gotten a lot less volatile over the course of 16 years, and it will continue to get less volatile. But that actually is a feature, not a bug, because in the near term, it means it's a better investment if you want upside in addition to all of its other attributes. But I've done an entire video on volatility. You can find that by going to my Facebook page and typing the word either volatile or the word volatility and watching that video. Okay, next up we have, unlike genuine safe haven assets, Bitcoin sinks in response to geopolitical fears. Okay, so he says, unlike gold and silver, which of course he's promoting, that's his business, is to promote gold and silver. He says, when there's geopolitical fears, Bitcoin goes down. So I've talked about this in previous videos that yes, when there are geopolitical fears and everybody freaks out, they sell what they have to or what they can, not what they want to. So sometimes you get people who sell Bitcoin when they freak out or when the world freaks out sometime. That doesn't mean that they want to sell Bitcoin. That means, on a weekend, it's the only thing they can sell because the stock market is closed. The Bitcoin market never closes. It's 24/7. And so sometimes you see Bitcoin go down because people freak out and they want liquidity in US dollars or some other currency. And Bitcoin's the only thing they can sell that gives them that rapid liquidity because the markets are closed. But again, at other times, he fails to mention that when the 3 different banks failed in March of last year, Bitcoin actually went up because people were worried about the banking system. So it depends on what the sort of global crisis of the day is. But he fails to point out the fact that at times, risk and geopolitical fears result in Bitcoin actually going up, not down. And again, he points this out because he is continuing to promote throughout the article gold and silver, which I own gold and silver left over from years ago. It does not work as money. There is no way for me to know whether the gold and silver I own is gold and silver, right? I mean, for all I know, the gold has tungsten on the inside and it's just a gold veneer. And the only way to know for sure is to melt it down, or I could buy a $50,000 spectrometer that would probably tell me what is gold and what is silver. But even then, I have a hard time telling purity. And so, again, this guy acts like the magic solution is gold and silver and ignores the fact that gold and silver do not work as money in a modern economy at all. He's just attached to them and their monetary properties from the past, but they just do not work in a modern economy. Okay, the next up in this guy's complaints about Bitcoin are the Bitcoin and overall crypto culture turned him off. So there's this concept of crypto bros. People running around trying to find the latest crypto that's going to get them rich and enable them to afford a Lamborghini. That is much more of a problem in ridiculous cryptos that other than Bitcoin. So if you go to a conference that is exclusively focused on Bitcoin and only has Bitcoiners, you really don't get these kind of people. These kind of people are just not Bitcoin people. Because they're looking for a scam. Bitcoin's not a scam. So I've met people like this. I just don't hang out with people like this. But, if you go to a crypto conference, you'll find everybody running around promoting their own token. Each of them has some sort of ridiculous token that they're promoting that everybody ought to buy. That, of course, makes that person rich and everybody else poor. Anyway, they get the term crypto bros. So he lumps Bitcoin and crypto together here, but what he's referring to, sort of the culture of crypto bros, are not Bitcoin bros. These are crypto bros. And, that I agree, that culture turns me off too. But that is not a Bitcoin culture. That is a sort of crypto grifter culture that tends to follow any new invention, whether it's artificial intelligence or crypto. And they're never running around promoting Bitcoin. They're always promoting the very latest scam coin that they got in early on, and they're trying to pump it up on everyone else. And, anyway, but he groups the two together there with Bitcoin and crypto, and he should not. Number 12, the proliferation and trading of altcoins and memes coins. Okay, well, I would agree with him on this one. But he doesn't mention Bitcoin. But who cares? The meme coins and the altcoins are almost all going to go to zero. It's a stupid game. A bunch of people are going to lose their money. What does that have to do with Bitcoin? It is not Bitcoin's fault that a bunch of people tried to mimic Bitcoin, create knockoffs, and are trying to get rich on stupid coins that are, named after dogs. In fact, one of the stupid coins that's up the most is fart coin, literally fart coin. So somebody invented fart coin, and then somehow it caught on, and then a bunch of people started speculating on it, and now fart coin is up 1,500%, which is super stupid. So I would agree with him. That's super stupid, but I have never advocated anybody buy anything other than Bitcoin BTC, the real thing, the one that's trading in the ballpark of $100,000. Like, that's the real Bitcoin. Don't buy anything else other than that, because the other crypto is almost entirely crypto scams, junk, stupid, not going to work, grifting, this and that. So I do agree with him on altcoins and meme coins. That whole thing is stupid and people are going to lose their money, but they're speculating on it the same way they speculate on, the sports betting and stuff like that. I don't sports bet either. I've never bought a lottery ticket. Like, some people do, but that has nothing to do with Bitcoin. Okay, next up, crypto hacks and scandals. Once again, you'll notice here he does not say Bitcoin hacks and scandals. He says crypto hacks and scandals. And then he goes on to list a litany of hacks as a result of, people with poor security practices, mostly related to not Bitcoin. But even so, it's like, look, you don't blame the US dollar every time, there's a bank, some bank robber is successful. It's not the dollar's fault. They didn't secure it right. So same with Bitcoin. Bitcoin is easier to secure than any other kind of money, which is why I promote all the time, buy your Bitcoin on Coinbase, but then move it to BitKey. So it won't get hacked and you won't get scammed and you won't get whatever else. But anyway, some people don't. A lot of people had Bitcoin back in 2014 that they left on Mt. Gox, which was a badly run Japanese exchange run by a French guy, I believe. And anyway, it had a security vulnerability and hackers were able to drain a lot of the Bitcoin out of it. But again, that was bad security practices. But almost everything he's talking about is related to crypto junk and not Bitcoin. But again, that's why I promote with anything, with any sort of money, you got to be security conscious and you got to secure it. Like, money does not secure itself. Like, you got to, use some effort. And if something gets hacked or someone gets scammed, you got to ask yourself, did you take the precautions or not? Okay, next up, number 14. Bitcoin and crypto haven't been tested by a powerful bear market or financial crisis. Again, Bitcoin has gone through 4 price drawdowns of greater than 75%. No other asset in the entire history of the world has gone through 4 price drawdowns greater than 75% and gone on to set a new all-time high. Literally, there's no asset in the entire world. So he acts like Bitcoin's never been battle tested. Seriously? Was he not here in 2022 or in 2018 or, March of 2020? Like, Bitcoin's been battle tested a zillion times. Bitcoin has been declared dead by the media 500 times. 500 times some idiot in the media has written an article about how the very latest news event results in the death of Bitcoin and it's never coming back. Seriously, come on. This guy acts like it's never been battle tested. Now, I agree it will be healthy and helpful for Bitcoin when it does go through a massive worldwide recession, because then people like this are not going to keep saying that anymore. And it will be helpful for Bitcoin to experience that and be hardened by it. My prediction is, well, first of all, we don't know. It depends on what causes a worldwide recession. There's a chance Bitcoin goes like crazy high because the reason is, in a worldwide recession, everybody's bailing out of all the assets that are dying and looking for something that's still alive, and Bitcoin will be that thing. So I think there's at least, 50-50 chance in a global worldwide recession that Bitcoin actually goes up, not down. But even if it goes down for a period of time, as the past would predict, it will recover faster than any other asset because it takes less time than any other asset to figure out that, wow, Bitcoin's monetary properties and the things that give it value are still there. They're still going strong. And so, people buy it back, which is what happens, which is why the drawdowns in price that Bitcoin has experienced have been relatively short. They've been short because it didn't take people very long to figure out, wait a second, the death of FTX had nothing to do with Bitcoin. And therefore, if it had nothing to do with Bitcoin, that means Bitcoin's not dead as a result of FTX. And then people buy it and it comes right back. Of course, it's never dead. The lowest point that Bitcoin has ever hit in each of the price drawdowns is radically higher than the lowest it got in the previous price drawdown. And I go through all of that on bitcoinbubblemyth.com. Again, Bitcoin Bubble and the word myth, myth.com. You can watch, I think it's about 16 minutes long. You can watch a presentation that goes through why Bitcoin is not a bubble. Okay. Number 15. Give me 1 second here. Bitcoin and crypto haven't stood the test of time. Okay, give me a break. Bitcoin's been here 16 years, 1/6. In the technology world, when something lasts for 16 years, that is a very long time in the technology world. 16 years is a very long time. Now, of course, he says, yeah, but we have gold and silver and they've been around for thousands of years. Well, great. But gold and silver do not work in a modern economy. Again, I got them and I tried to use them. I tried to figure out, is there any way I can use gold and silver? Back when I first bought Bitcoin in 2017, I also bought some gold and silver to try to figure out if there was any way the world would ever run on a gold or silver standard. And it's completely impossible. It's not going to happen, which is why it did not happen in the past. In a modern economy, it got replaced with paper that represented gold and silver. And then, of course, they printed too much of the paper, which has happened 100% of the time that it's happened. So, Bitcoin's, been as battle tested as anything can be, and it's been 16 years, 1/6. That's a long time. All right. Number 16. Nobody truly knows what cryptocurrencies are worth or how to value them. Well, we know how to value them. They're based on the value is in the credibility of their monetary properties, how certain we are that Bitcoin has good monetary properties. I've covered that in other videos. And how to value them is based on supply and demand, Metcalfe's law, and all of that. So in the Bitcoin Bubble Myth presentation, I specifically talk about how to value cryptocurrencies, and I talk about the organizations that you can reference when valuing cryptocurrencies. So go watch bitcoinbubblemyth.com. I answer both of those questions in there on bitcoinbubblemyth.com. All right, number 17. Cryptocurrencies are heavily reliant upon the internet and the electrical grid. Okay, yes, that is true. But Bitcoin also runs on satellites. If there is any electrical pulse in the world, Bitcoin can run. It doesn't matter if it's dumb phones or smartphones or satellites or ham radio or M-Pesa or text message, SMS. Bitcoin can run on any of those things. And as long as there is one Bitcoin node anywhere in the world, the whole thing runs. And even if all the electricity in the entire world got shut off, again, Bitcoin's running on satellites. And even if all the satellites got shut off, it would take literally the very moment that electricity came back on, Bitcoin would be the very first thing to spring back to life based on how Bitcoin is designed to be built. So it is dependent on those things. But I think in the year 2024, we've all agreed that we're going to use the internet and that the internet works. And the internet's been through a lot of things. And we figured out, even in the midst of a war between Russia and Ukraine, how to make the internet work with Starlink. So at this point, most of the world's entire surface area is covered by Starlink. So there's high-speed. Starlink is covering the entire world with high-speed internet from satellites, which means, again, you're not even reliant on the power grid. You can charge your phone with a what do you call it? A photosynthesis, whatever. I'm forgetting the name. Anyway, the power of the sun, solar, I guess a solar panel. You can charge your phone with a solar panel, and your phone can direct uplink to Starlink. So anyway, so all that to say, but again, anybody who says it's not going to work and we're going to go back to gold and silver, the problem is gold and silver are not divisible. Nobody who holds gold, everybody who has gold has it in the form of coins or bullions. And the coins are all like 1 ounce. So you're restricted to buying only things that cost about $2,600. And again, it's just, you cannot use gold and silver. It is not divisible functional money in a modern economy. You can't do it. Again, because I bought gold and silver back in 2017 and figured I'd see if I, could envision a world where that would ever work, and it totally doesn't work. Okay. Number 18. Again, this is 18 out of 24. We're getting there. Cryptocurrencies are part of a broader dystopian trend that encourages us to embrace the virtual over the physical, distancing us from tangible assets and realities. He goes on a little rampage here where he says we're all sucked into our phones and gold and silver are physical and you can hold them in your hand and, you know, they're sort of part of nature and Bitcoin's made up by humans. Anyway, he goes on a rant, but it's kind of a pathetic rant in my opinion. But I'm not going to address it because it's, I mean, what? By this argument, we should not be using, you know, we should not be refrigerating our food either, right? We should be eating only natural food that has not been refrigerated because that's not natural. Even fire, humans invented fire, right? I mean, we cook our food. Is he going to argue that we shouldn't cook our food because we're more natural? You know, the dystopian reality where we're cooking our food is, you know, dystopian. It just doesn't make sense. All right, number 19. Cryptocurrencies are paving the way for a central bank digital currency. All right, on this one, he's totally off the rails. Bitcoin is the opposite, literal opposite of a central bank digital currency. It works the opposite of a central bank digital currency. And the worst threat to a central bank digital currency is Bitcoin. Like Bitcoin is the antidote to a central bank digital currency. So he goes on and on about how, you know, anyway, his arguments don't make any sense because literally Bitcoin's the opposite. So that's number 18. Number 19, Bitcoin lacks privacy and anonymity. Okay, so Bitcoin is pseudonymous, which means when you transact on the Bitcoin network, all everybody sees is ones and zeros not connected to your name. But it is true that if you get a court order if Coinbase gets a court order requiring them to disclose who sent specific Bitcoin to somebody, they will have to disclose by, to law enforcement who sent it. There are cryptocurrencies that are anonymous, like Monero, but the problem with Monero is twofold. One, if something is truly anonymous, what does he call it? He calls it privacy. If something has total privacy and anonymity, it also means you can't audit it, which means you don't know how much of it there is. So a huge problem with Monero is you don't know how much Monero there is, and there's no way to audit the Monero because the privacy and the secrecy and anonymity of Monero means you never know how much there is. Well, nobody's going to trust Monero with a huge amount of their personal wealth if you're not even sure how much Monero there is or whether there's been a glitch or a bug that has enabled somebody to print more. Which can't happen in Bitcoin because Bitcoin, the entire ledger gets audited every 10 minutes. Literally every transaction from the beginning of time gets audited every 10 minutes. So you can't have those problems. So additionally, privacy and anonymity result in government bans. So the vast majority of cryptocurrency exchanges will not carry Monero because it is used too much for money laundering. So I used to think early on that I wish Satoshi Nakamoto had spent more time building privacy and anonymity into Bitcoin. But ultimately, I came to the conclusion that that was impossible to do unless you wanted it to get banned by governments for money laundering. So Bitcoin is as private and as anonymous as a cryptocurrency can be while still not being a good tool for criminals. So there is not a way to make Bitcoin more anonymous or more private without it becoming a tool for criminals to do money laundering. There's just not a way. So if somebody let me go back to the very beginning of time and redesign Bitcoin, I would not build anything. I would not build more anonymity or privacy into Bitcoin because Bitcoin would not be on the track it's on for global adoption if governments around the world were banning it because you just can never figure out who transacted with who. Again, if you can do that, then you can do that for arms dealing. You can do that for drug smuggling. You can do that for a bunch of stuff the government doesn't want you to do. And they're not going to allow a cryptocurrency to succeed if it can be used in that way. All right, so next up, Bitcoin's mysterious and possibly shady origins. And then he goes into this where I think he talks about security and like the video I just did earlier today about Roger Ver. He's like, ooh, maybe the NSA was involved. Give me a break. The NSA was not involved in the creation of Bitcoin. The security community was not. Bitcoin is the opposite of anything the government would ever want or would ever create. So anyway, he kind of goes off the rails here. And if you study the origins of Bitcoin, it's very clear. It was created by one or more cypherpunks. These are people. They are computer coders that wanted freedom money. They were tired of the debasement and constant money printing of the Federal Reserve, and they wanted to create a money that the government could not make more of. That is what they wanted. I've read everything that Satoshi Nakamoto has ever written. It's in the book called The Book of Satoshi, and it documents every single post that Satoshi Nakamoto has ever written. And so I've read all of that. I've read a huge amount of his writings with other people. And again, as a libertarian, I know how he thinks. I know how he operates. You know, the desire to have money the government can't corrupt. Satoshi was way smarter than I am, but he was approaching the world exactly like I do, which is, hey, this government money printing by these sinful people is never going to stop unless we solve it with technology. The same way, with the invention of email, which was invented for other reasons, but it's the same way it works as regard to the Postal Service. If you were upset about the U.S. Postal Service and how slow they were in delivering mail, the government is not going to invent email to obsolete the Postal Service. That's not how the government works. But anyway, this guy, makes various accusations that make no sense. All right, number 22, we're getting there. Cryptocurrencies are a diversion and a distraction from gold and silver. So now he comes out and is like, he actually explains that the reason he wrote this article is he thinks we ought to stay on gold and silver, and that he's a gold and silver analyst, and he's a gold and silver investor, and he's afraid that Bitcoin is going to replace gold and silver. And yes, it will. Just to be clear, he should be worried about that because that's exactly what's happening. First of all, I don't know why he's hung up on silver. Silver got demonetized by gold a long time ago. So anybody that's investing in silver thinking it's a precious metal or that it's scarce, it's just not. There's about, I think, something like 30% more silver gets dug out of the ground every year as compared to all the silver that has already been dug out of the ground. Anyway, silver is not at all scarce compared to gold. And even gold, the total supply of gold doubles about every 36 years. So in your lifetime, the amount of gold that humans have control over, meaning it's above ground, as in it's been dug out and mined, that amount of gold in your lifetime is somewhere between quadruple and 8x increase, because it doubles the amount of gold that humans have access to, doubles about every 36 years, which is a 2% inflation rate. So anyway, he's arguing that Bitcoin is a threat to gold and silver. Yes, it is a threat to gold and silver, but that is not our problem. That is his problem. That is only a problem of someone who's decided to live in the past and not the future. And he needs to embrace the future, just like Peter Schiff needs to embrace the future. Okay, next up we have number 23. Gold and silver are creations of God, while cryptocurrencies are creations of man. Okay, this guy, and then he goes on a tangent and says gold and silver are better because God made them. Well, look, God, I'm a Christian. God made humans' ability to invent things. Our ability to rub sticks together and make fire, God enabled us to do that. God did not just make little piles of fire all over the world that we're supposed to roast our food over. God gave us brains to figure out how to make fire. God gave us brains to figure out how to invent the wheel so we can move things around easily. God gave us brains so we can invent the printing press, so we could share information. God gave us the ability to harness electricity. So all of these things are things that humans figured out how to harness. And so we did the same with money, with Bitcoin. So I don't know why he's hung up on this one. It strikes me as a very poor argument to say, well, gold and silver are on the periodic table, therefore God made them, therefore they're inherently better. Again, by that argument, we should not be heating our food because, did God make refrigeration? Well, or did God just give us brains that allowed humans to invent refrigeration? By his argument, we shouldn't be using refrigeration. And by his argument, we shouldn't be using the internal combustion engine or the internet because, God didn't directly make all of those on the elemental table. But anyway, it's a ridiculous argument, but he makes it, like a lot of these things here. All right, next up, he's got... Unlike gold and silver, cryptocurrencies are not beautiful. Okay, then he goes off the rails with how beautiful gold and silver is as compared to cryptocurrencies. So first of all, I would say math is beautiful. Like in all the thousands of hours I've spent studying Bitcoin, it is beautiful. Like it is beautiful when we use the brains that God has given us to invent amazing things. And the ability to invent digital scarcity is beautiful. When you look, for somebody like me, when you look at a Bitcoin address and you realize, wow, Satoshi thought of everything. If I double click this address, he left all the characters out that would cause it to be split into multiple parts. So if I double click this Bitcoin address, it's always going to select the whole thing. That's beautiful. The fact that it's all the checksums are built in, where if you mistype a Bitcoin address, there's only a 1 in 4.3 billion chance that you can accidentally mistype a Bitcoin address and it will still let you send it. A 1 in 4.3 billion chance. That's beautiful. Like, when humans make things, it is possible that humans can make beautiful things. And this guy argues that, that's not the case because, gold and silver are beautiful because they're shiny. And frankly, there's a lot of stuff that's prettier than gold and silver. It just doesn't have good monetary properties. And there's no reason that gold is inherently beautiful. There's no reason that a yellow metal would have been the beautiful metal. It just so happens that gold is more scarce than any other metal. If some other metal with some other color were more scarce than gold, then we would view that metal as more beautiful. So again, he makes weak arguments here. So here's the summary from all of this. One, there are no original thoughts. Every single argument he makes in this entire thing is an argument I've heard before. Number two, he often switches back and forth between the word crypto and the word Bitcoin because a lot of his accusations do not apply to Bitcoin, but they do apply to crypto, meaning all the junk coins that are not Bitcoin. So he switches back and forth, hoping that the reader will not realize that some of what he's saying does not apply to Bitcoin at all. It just applies to crypto. And, for the things that he's complaining about crypto that is not Bitcoin, I agree with him on a lot of those because, almost nothing in the crypto world is worth anything other than Bitcoin. And whatever else might be worth something in the crypto world, we don't even know what it is. So the only thing that's really valuable, in my opinion, is Bitcoin. But a lot of times he switches to the word crypto because the accusation he's about to make does not apply to Bitcoin. So, and then again, this guy is in the business of promoting gold and silver and investing in gold and silver. And so he has a strong incentive to not like the direction the world is going. And he will, just like someone heavily invested in the horse and buggy whips and stables and stable boys and, that whole world, that person is going to object to the automobile because it undermines their entire line of business. If they are in the business of breeding horses and everybody needs a horse for transportation and now everybody just buys an automobile, somebody's going to be writing articles like this opposing the automobile as a form of transportation, highlighting how dangerous it is. And every time there's been any new technological revolution, there's always been people like this guy opposing forward progress and arguing that the correct direction for humanity is to stay where we are or go backwards. In the case of this guy, he's arguing we should go back to gold and silver, which already failed as money for all the reasons I've talked about in other videos, rather than forwards to Bitcoin, which is where I think we ought to go. So, and I started that quest and came to that conclusion back in 2017, in early 2017, when I actually had about the same amount of gold and silver as I did Bitcoin. And then I came to the conclusion that gold was going to win that one and therefore bought sorry, I forget what I just said. I came to the conclusion that Bitcoin was going to win that standoff, and therefore I bought way more Bitcoin and I bought 0 more gold and silver. And as a result of that, I've accumulated way more Bitcoin and 0 additional gold and silver, because back when I did not have a dog in the hunt, or I should say when I had an equal dog in the hunt of gold, silver, and Bitcoin, I came to the conclusion that Bitcoin was going to win, and it has. Or it's not finished winning, but it's appreciated far in excess of gold or silver or anything else. So that is the takedown of this article, 24 reasons why I don't believe in Bitcoin and crypto. And again, this guy did not have any original thoughts, has a huge dog in the hunt for gold and silver, and I just disagree with all his conclusions. Happy to provide individual specific videos for each of the reasons if you're interested. Thanks for watching, everyone.